Israel and Ukraine, two countries with a lot in common, and not in the way Western propaganda would have you think. This week, Israel raided the offices of several Palestinian NGOs in a fashion so brutal, even Washington saw fit to criticize it. Just a few days earlier, a similar story surfaced in Ukraine of people being punished for accepting humanitarian aid.
We will now focus on the noteworthy cases of the collaborators' activities. They have notified two citizens of Ukraine on suspicion who began to collaborate with the occupying forces. They received humanitarian aid from the aggressor and had it distributed among the local population.
The justification? Kiev considers it criminal collaboration for people to receive humanitarian aid from Moscow in pro-Russian areas. Indifference towards the killing of civilians, including children, is another area where Tel Aviv and Kiev overlap. The eviction of Palestinians in East Jerusalem and in the occupied West Bank, the military detention of minors, bombings of civilian areas. These are all long-documented Israeli actions that many opponents have labeled genocidal.
People to hear us in their homes. We want the cameras here to hear us.
Today, he would say, "Free, free Palestine!"
For the last 8 years, Ukraine's military campaign against the Donbas people has been shockingly similar. Indiscriminate bombings, cutting off supplies of fresh water, alleged war crimes documented by international rights organizations. What's more, the attitudes of many who support Kiev in the mainstream Ukrainian media could hardly be considered not genocidal.
Donbass has a whole bunch of problems, the biggest of which is that it's severely overpopulated with people nobody has any use for. No matter how cruel that may sound, there is a certain category of people that must be exterminated.
Sounds a bit like what some Israelis think about Arabs.
I can say for myself that if there was a button I could press that would make all the Arabs disappear, that would put them all on an express train to Switzerland. May they live wonderful lives there.
Thousands of Palestinians who work in Israel are also being denied pension benefits that would otherwise be available to Israelis. Another striking similarity with the plight of the Donbas people.
The elderly who are left in non-government-controlled areas are among the most vulnerable of the civilian population. For many of them, pension payments are their main means to survive. Ukraine, as a party to the international conventions guaranteeing social protection, should take all measures necessary to ensure the rights of those people. Suspending and cutting off people from their rightful pensions contradicts national and international obligations of Ukraine.
Internationally banned devices of death are fair play for both Tel Aviv and Kiev as well. The Ukrainians' weapon of choice? Pedal mines that Kiev claimed to have destroyed, launched in cluster bombs over residential areas in Donetsk. The IDF, for its part, has long been using dense inert metal explosives, armor-piercing bombs, and white phosphorus, weapons that cause debilitating and inhumane wounds to those unlucky enough to fall victim to them. And accompanying this blatant disrespect for international law has been a drawn-out propaganda campaign, silencing those who try to speak up.
This is not a new phenomenon. This has been happening for years now, and it's contributing to silencing our voice and restricting us from documenting human rights violations and war crimes that we are exposed to.
If you're a critic outside the immediate reach of the Israeli and Ukrainian governments, don't worry. There are blacklists that will try every which way to get you canceled. Kiev's got Mirotvorets, a list with connections to Ukrainian intelligence, which brings attention to anyone labeled an enemy of the Ukrainian state. Tel Aviv's vehicle of character assassination is called Canary Mission, which the Israeli government uses liberally when deciding who can work, live, or even enter the country. Yours truly is on both lists. A person who is not a terrorist, not a violent extremist, but a journalist. It just goes to show who these governments are really trying to silence.